So, Mr. Mac, I woke up this morning at 3 minutes after 6 o'clock.
Ooh.
Yeah, I had to
Why?
pee.
Ah,
I had to pee.
you're getting old.
And then the excitement of Toronto Blue Jays playoff baseball stopped me from going back to sleep. I've got those butterflies in my stomach, that you got when you were like even before grade school started, right? When Christmas was still like had this magic to it.
Oh yeah.
That's how I felt this morning.
It's Christmas. I love it. That's great.
Like to the point where I'm like, man, it's so early I can't even turn on Blair and Barker. Like there's nothing to satisfy
Oh man,
this craving that I need.
all our viewers out in Ontario can't wrap their minds around the beauty of Blair and Barker starting at 8 a.m.
Yes, exactly. I know. And on top of it, man, I was like right away go to the Toronto Blue Jays Twitter page to see if they had released their lineup yet, and they still hadn't released it
They
at
were
3 minutes
waiting.
after 6 o'clock Mountain Time. But we do have a full playoff roster
It's
to
out.
go over for the show. It is out, so of course we will get into that. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the walk-off. It is a magical time of year. It is playoff baseball time. I'm Scott Belford, joined as always by the best co-host in the biz, Adam Mack. This weekend, all of our hopes and dreams are kind of placed on a 72-hour window, Adam.
Yep.
162 baseball games all come down to a weekend. It almost feels surreal. It's like the most magical thing about baseball is that it is always the long term, right? You're always like, don't overblow this game, how much it means, and then all of a
Never
sudden
get too
playoffs
high,
hit,
never
and it's
get
the
too
complete
low.
opposite. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So very excited about this. We are obviously going to get into it. Just a heads up to everybody, we're very lucky to be joined on Monday, whether it is to talk all sorts of positivity and look forward to the next series, or to all kind of put our hands on our face and let the emotions flow. Either way, we're going to be joined by the Fans 590 from Sportsnet, Ben Ennis on Monday night. So we'll unpack everything that has happened in the Blue Jays world, good or bad. So that's
Hey,
going to take place on Monday.
here's a fun note. When I got the YouTube fired up this morning, fresh comment waiting for me, complaining about how the two of us look like a bunch of homers. Uh, I suppose it's an
Okay.
angry, frustrated Seattle Mariners fan, but yeah, I think we qualify as Blue Jays homers at this point.
If you have not deciphered that we are Blue Jays fans, well, I guess we'll let you in on this. Both hardcore Blue Jays fans.
Here's the
So
big reveal.
if you're watching the channel for unbiased opinion, this may not be the place for you. However, we are going to get into everything Blue Jays. If you are looking to follow us and interact with us, you can of course do so in our Discord. The link is in the show notes. You can follow us on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast and on Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast. We are always very grateful and thankful for our Patreon members. Of course, Patreon is going to allow you to watch all of our videos unedited. It's going to give you early access to interviews, and of course, it's going to help out the channel big time with all the little things. We'll read the names at the end of the show, but
You bet.
please know that we appreciate all of you.
Of course.
Playoff rosters were announced this morning. So we are going to get into that. Of course, Luis Castillo is the big stud ace on the mound for the Seattle Mariners in this game one. He is one of the best in the league, but is it hopeless? I say it is not, and I've got numbers to back that up. It's been 6 long years since playoff baseball has been in Toronto, so we're going to talk the atmosphere that these guys can expect. This young core has never seen how crazy Toronto truly can be in a playoff game. We're going to take a look at some of the other wild card series that are going on today. John Schneider could get creative with the pitching and is probably going to need to, so we'll kind of dive into the scenarios that we can expect throughout the weekend. Whit Merrifield is becoming a fan favorite, and why wouldn't he? We're getting glimpses of his personality, and we're seeing him succeed with this Toronto Blue Jays team. But how much of a difference maker could he be? We're going to explore that, and then we're going to end things on what most people consider a negative, which is the start time to these games. However, I will fill you in on who is pretty excited about these start times. Put a little positive spin on it to close things out.
Love it.
So let's get into it, my dude. Obviously, this playoff roster, we've been waiting for this. We've been talking and speculating. What is this playoff roster going to look like? Any big surprises on your end? Let's go over it here.
All right, let's pull it up. Anybody listening on audio, you're missing out. We got the lineup here. So pitchers, infielders, 3 catchers, 4 outfielders. Here's the list of pitchers: Anthony Bass, Jose Barrios, Adam Simber, Jimmy Garcia, Kevin Gossman, Yusei Kikuchi, little surprise there. Alek Manoah, Tim Meza, David Phelps, Zach Pop, Trevor Richards, Jordan Romano, Ross Stripling. No Mitch White. Mitch White is
so
not on the roster.
Truly the players worth noting is that the Blue Jays did decide to go with 3 catchers, Gabriel Moreno, on this playoff roster. Mm-hmm. That's a little bit of a surprise. The other little bit of a surprise, if you will, Bradley Zimmer has been left off of the playoff roster.
Is it a surprise?
The Blue Jays.
Did you think he was going to make it?
I didn't truly know.
Here's the list of outfielders on the roster. Jackie Bradley Jr. is our 4th outfielder. Obviously, in right, we got Teoscar, George in center, Tapia in left.
Yeah, I mean, that is pretty much as we expected. I guess if there was any surprise, it's that Lourdes Gurriel Jr. wasn't able to get healthy in time to be in the lineup. I think it goes without say that Lourdes would be in this lineup if there was any way that he could.
Yeah.
He is our left fielder, and he has put up great offensive numbers. He's had a career year this season. He's a guy who definitely sprays the ball around the field. He's not hitting for power, but he does offer a look to this lineup that is a little less redundant. He's not a guy who relies on power. He gets on base, and he hits those doubles. He's kind of similar to Whit Merrifield in that bottom of the lineup way of constructing your roster of to get guys on base for the big guys at the top of the order.
Roll it over. Yeah, you bet. Infielder is pretty chalk. We got Bo Bichette, Kevin Biggio, Matt Chapman. Espinal, worth noting, returning from the IL. So big congrats to him. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Whit Merrifield. So Biggio could play outfield. Merrifield can play outfield. Espinal, I don't know if he's ever officially lined up as an outfielder this year, but with the shift, he plays outfield probably 20% of the time anyways.
Mm-hmm.
We're set for
and
outfielders.
I think we could see Whit Merrifield in the outfield in game 2 of this series if they're trying to eliminate the left-handed bats that would be facing Robbie Ray in tomorrow's game. So if they're going to remove, let's say, Raimel Tapia from left field, we might see Whit Merrifield put into left and then Espinal slot into second base. But we'll need to wait and see on that. We do have some action in the chat here. Jim says, first playoff since following the Blue Jays for me. So excited and so lucky these game times being from the Netherlands.
Oh, beauty.
And all. So there's that spin, right? There's where some of these people are excited about the start time of the game, which is the Netherlands, of course. Hello, folks in the Netherlands. We're big fans of one of the top prospects, Semro Burs, who, of course, resides
friend of the show.
From the Netherlands. Yeah, friend of the show.
Sem's great.
Sam is great. We'll need to have him back over the offseason just to go over his double-A experience. And Avenue says they sent Mitch White to the minors, I see. Kind of sad, which is true. Mitch White did not make the playoff roster. I think it was kind of between him and Yusei Kikuchi, and the truth is Yusei has looked a lot better over the last 3 weeks than Mitch White has. Mitch White has term. So Mitch White is under control with this Toronto Blue Jays organization for the next 2 years. I think that Mitch is going to be a contributing member to this starting pitching staff in the future. This just wasn't his year, and this team needs to look to win now.
If you're looking to win now, nothing says win now like Yusei Kikuchi.
Well, let's talk that a little bit. Let's talk Yusei a little bit here, because I think there is a good reason why he is on this roster. He's a little bit of length. He kind of he's insurance in case one of these games gets out of hand in a good or a bad way. If the Blue Jays, let's say, are blowing the Mariners out tonight, maybe you do only pitch Alek Manoah 5 innings. And maybe you do go to Yusei if you've got a big lead, and vice versa. Obviously, if the Jays are losing, you want to save that bullpen, and if there's no hope of coming back, I think the way, and we talked about this, Ben Nicholson-Smith kind of put it, that we could see Yusei on this playoff roster, which we are, in case the Blue Jays are losing by 1,000,000 runs, is kind of how he put it. So
here's an interesting wrinkle. I know I sent this to you yesterday, but Yusei Kikuchi has pitched in Seattle dozens of times in his career.
Mm-hmm.
And Seattle, as a team, has a batting average of 0.53 against him. Elite pitcher. Seattle
Small
does not hit
size.
historically.
Yes.
I mean, has he pitched dozens of times in Seattle? Yes. Has it been against the Mariners? Only once. So, yeah. Point being, you can make stats say anything you want them to. But
and
also,
we do.
Look, for real, the last 5 outings from Yusei Kikuchi have been a reason to be optimistic about him. Maybe not for this year. Do I still want to see him come into a game with a less than 5-run lead or deficit? No. But do I feel a little bit better about him for next year? Yeah. His last 5 games, for anybody that wasn't here yesterday, a whip of .60, an ERA of 2.16, 15 Ks per 9, and 2.16 walks per 9. Those are phenomenal numbers. Now, yes, they are out of the bullpen, and yes, it is only over the course of like 6 innings.
It's the first hope we've seen for Yusei Kikuchi almost all
4
year.
straight outings to end the season without allowing a run. I mean,
that is all you can ask out of a
it's something to
relief
build
pitcher,
on, right?
To limit walks and hits. Absolutely. And it is a positive. It is a positive.
His making the roster might just be an acknowledgement of that, like he has righted the ship a little bit, and it is a vote of confidence in him as a member of this team in the long haul. Look, he's here for 2 more years. That contract is not getting DFA'd anytime soon. It could just be you're a part of this team, buddy.
Yeah.
When we sent him down to AAA mid-season and then he came back in the bullpen role, he said everything right. Like, as far as team player goes, he's the attitude isn't the problem with Yusei Kikuchi. No,
he's a team-first guy. So absolutely, I would say he's a team-first guy.
I would say, yeah, given the way he ended the season, it could just be as simple as we want to show a little acknowledgement. Are we really painting ourselves into a bad spot by not having Bradley Zimmer on the roster instead of Yusei Kikuchi? I would say I'm not too worried about it.
I would agree.
I don't know. Congrats to Yusei Kikuchi for earning his way onto this playoff roster. I think legitimately. And I just want to say that.
So let's talk Luis Castillo, the starting pitcher for the Seattle Mariners tonight, really quickly, because he is a stud. This is an ace. He was the most sought-after pitcher on the trade market at the deadline. He was the big score of the trade deadline. And the Seattle Mariners gave up a haul for him. Their number 1 prospect, I think it was their number 5 and 9. I could be off, but it's right in that zone, right? Like top prospects were moved to bring in Luis Castillo from Cincinnati to Seattle to pitch right where he's pitching right now at the top of that starting rotation in the playoffs. So that's why the Blue Jays are lined up against him. Now, Luis Castillo is all about velo. He's got a wipeout slider that still comes in around 95 miles an hour. He's going to touch 99. He's got a filthy changeup. Absolutely a wipeout changeup. But here's the thing, okay? Against right-handed hitters, which is this almost entire Blue Jays lineup, he only throws that changeup 11% of the time. So what the Blue Jays need to do is almost eliminate the changeup from what they're looking for. Now, high velo pitchers, the Blue Jays have actually done really well against them in comparison to the rest of the league. Obviously, the entire league struggles with any velo over 97 miles an hour, and that's exactly where Luis Castillo sits. Okay, he averages about 98 miles an hour on his fastball. He's touching 99 and 100 on a regular basis. The Blue Jays, with pitches over 97 miles an hour this year, have 115 hits. That's good for number 1 in all of baseball. The next closest is going to be the Los Angeles Dodgers at 92. So they're substantially better. Now, it is too bad Lourdes Gurriel Jr. was not able to get into this lineup because Lourdes is the best high velo fastball hitter on this entire team. He, for whatever reason, has the ability to get that barrel of the bat around in time to connect. So I think that's why it took so long for the Blue Jays to actually announce their lineup, as they were waiting on Lourdes. They were seeing if they could slot him in even at that DH level. And I think that's why we're seeing Danny Jansen DH today, is that Danny's hot, and even though that he only hits 156 against high velo pitchers, you're hoping to go with the hot hand here. I know Logan in chat says thoughts on Danny Jansen starting DH instead of Kirk. Now, Kirk just has been the battery mate of Alek Manoah, 29 of 30 starts this season. So I think it just goes without say that the Blue Jays are going to go with what Alek Manoah is most comfortable with here. His routine is with Alejandro Kirk, so I think that's why you're seeing Kirk get the start today. Kirk will DH the next 2 games in this series if a third game is needed. So, do you think Danny Jansen is slotted in here because there's no other options? Obviously, it would be nice if we had a big lefty bat that we could slot into that DH spot. That's probably the prime scenario here, but this is not something that has been solved with this organization over the year, right? Like, we've talked about a lefty bat a lot. So I think Danny Jansen's the obvious choice here. Where are you at with just...
Yeah, I would say, like, Danny Jansen on pace for, I know he missed a bunch of time due to injuries, unfortunately. He was on pace for 35 home runs over the course of 162. He's got real power in that bat. He's figured it out after we talked with Danny Jansen on this show about the adjustments he's made to his swing and the influence that he's taken from Marcus Semien actually last year, and just leaning into the fact that he is a pull power hitter. Ended the season, last month of the season, so last 25 games, 351 batting average. OPS 1.058.
Yeah. It's you go with the hot hand.
He is hitting phenomenally well the last month. I'm very confident in Danny Jansen in that DH spot. I would rather see, to be honest, even if Lourdes Gurriel was healthy enough to crack this lineup at the last minute, without having seen him play in that last series against the Orioles, game 1, I feel better about Danny Jansen as the DH, and maybe get Gurriel in like a pinch hit situation depending on game script or whatever the case may be. But Danny Jansen is a great hitter. I mean, I'm very happy with Danny Jansen's ability at the plate right now.
Since he changed his approach, which he mentioned to us when he came on the show in April, he mentioned that one of the things that he had always concentrated on as a hitter was spraying the ball all over the field, hitting it to both fields. And this year, he kind of hit a wall, and he was just like, you know what? I'm a pull hitter. It's always been what I do best. I'm going to concentrate on my strength. And since he has eliminated going the other way from his repertoire and just played to his strength, his power's been up. His numbers have been up across the board. We're seeing him even get on base more. Because he's eliminating. Go ahead.
Career batting average 223. Batting average this season 261. Is it a blip on the radar? Is it an aberration, or does this turning the page and, like you said, leaning into your strengths?
And I mean, Danny Jansen has only played a little under half the season. So, yes, this is a small sample size. But again, I'm loving what Danny has brought to the table in 2022. I have full faith in Mr. Jansen and what he can do. And I think that him slotting into DH in this game is the best option the Blue Jays have.
This is a good example, leaning into your strengths and not trying to do something that you're not. This is the argument for when people complain about the banning the shift and guys should just be able to hit the other way, and like it's not just that easy, right? Like, yes. If you don't lean into your strength, whatever that may be, you're more likely than not a major league hitter, right? Like, you're probably in AAA, right? The guys that make it to the highest levels do so by dominating the way they dominate. So the idea that Joey Gallo can just hit the other way, like, it's not quite that easy, unfortunately. So
let's talk playoff baseball back in Toronto. Something that has not happened in 6 years. And I'll tell you a little story here, Adam, about the wild card game where Edwin Encarnacion hit that wild card winning series home run, right? It wasn't a series, sir. Wild card game. This is when it was a one and done. We'll all remember it's one of the more iconic moments in Toronto Blue Jays history, right? Edwin Encarnacion beating the Baltimore Orioles in extra innings in the wild card game. So I was working in downtown Toronto at the time. I was setting up an event center that was just within range of the Rogers Center, probably about 10 blocks away. I had the game on in my headphones. I was listening on the radio. And there was a bit of a delay, and I knew there was a delay. I didn't know there was a delay, but I knew there was a delay after that home run was hit because you could feel the ground shaking. This is literally 10 blocks from the Rogers Center. You could hear the explosion of screams and excitement. And I mean, you watch that home run on replay now, and the whole thing is shaking. The excitement, the sound doesn't even register, right? Like the mics couldn't even pick it up. It just all of a sudden turned to inaudible, like buzzing almost, right? Overmodulation from the excitement that was within that Toronto Blue Jays realm, if you will. To the point where Alek Manoah even brought up that he is watching that clip on replay. Very excited for the excitement. So my question to you, Adam, this young core, the Vladdies, the Bows, the Kirks, the Manoahs, have never experienced playoff baseball in Toronto. Do you think that there's any way that these kids are overwhelmed? Or do you think there's zero chance? I love hearing that, man.
Zero chance. I mean, playoff baseball is, I know it's a beast of its own, but like the way these kids played last September, it was essentially do or die for a month straight. Mm-hmm. Right? We saw big clutch hits out of every one of the kids. Lourdes had some pretty clutch grand slams last September, if I remember correctly. Bo hit some pretty nice game-winning home runs late in like the 8th inning against the Yankees. Like everybody had a chance to rise to the occasion. Everybody did. Alek Manoah, been saying it his whole career since like day one of spring training. This kid like is a big game pitcher. I have no worries about this at all.
These kids kind of crave that sort of big moment anyways. I mean, let's go back, and I'm not even going to try and compare a spring training game in Montreal to a playoff game in Toronto, but I think we all remember Vladimir Guerrero Jr. before his big call-up hitting that walk-off home run at Olympic Stadium in Montreal, and just what a big moment that was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was 18 years old at this time. I think another thing that this organization has done really well is bring in guys with the experience to be the backbone for these kids if they are a little overwhelmed, right? I mean, they went out and spent $150 million on maybe the best playoff player in baseball history. And I don't want to overpump George Springer's tires, but there's a big reason why he was one of the most sought-after free agents in the 2020 free agent market. And it was because he had proved time and time and time again that when the chips were down, he came up big. World Series MVP with the Astros in 2017. Big-time home runs throughout all of his playoff appearances. Like this is a guy whose power, if you're talking video game mode, right? His bar moves up when it's playoff time. Jackie Bradley Jr. has been there, done that, has a World Series ring from 2018. I think that's one of the big reasons the Blue Jays went out and picked him up off of waivers, despite the fact it was going to cost them $3 million to do so. Going out and spending $110 million on Kevin Gausman, a guy who has playoff experience with the San Francisco Giants. Like, there is playoff experience within this locker room, and I think that is really going to trickle down throughout the core that is this youth. The youthful core, I should say, of this team.
The youthful core. George Springer, career OPS, 895 in the postseason.
Wow.
19 home runs in 5 postseason runs. Yeah,
it's very impressive.
This is why we pay him the big bucks. This is where we give him the slack when he needs extended rest periods in August, and it's frustrating. George, it's time to go to work, buddy. Like,
this might be the healthiest George Springer has been all season long as well. I know you and I have talked about this ad nauseum when he first came off the IL, that you could just tell that he was still the driving force of this offense when they needed him most, and he was doing it with one elbow. And then remember the game he got hit in the other elbow, and then now he has bands or whatever, the tension bands to like keep everything together on both elbows. And you're just like, how is this man even playing baseball? How can he swing a bat with 2 bum elbows? And he fought his way through it. And he has been the best he has been all season the last 2 weeks of this year. Again, Teoscar Hernandez is another guy too, really heating up at the right time. This lineup is ready to go. 3-game series, anything can happen. But the Toronto Blue Jays put together one of the best Septembers to close out this the season of any team in baseball this year. The Seattle Mariners, on the other hand, are scuffling. And again, you can't take in a 3-game series, you can't look at the long term and try and figure out actually how it's going to go. But boy, oh boy, talk about 2 teams coming in on different levels right now.
It's exciting. I can't wait for it. 2:00 Mountain Time can't come fast enough. I'll tell you that.
So I know that we were going over MLB rankings last night, or yesterday, I should say, and we definitely talked about how the pitching for this Toronto Blue Jays In comparison to the other 12 playoff teams, MLB ranked them 11. And that doesn't mean that they're necessarily a bad pitching lot. They're just not as deep of some of the teams like the Rays and the Dodgers, who are at the top of that list. So we could see John Schneider need to get creative to best utilize this pitching staff. In fact, it was even announced today they have no starting pitcher lined up for tomorrow. Now, Adam and I, we've talked about this, buddy. Remember a couple weeks ago when I even said, watch them put they're going to go Alek Manoah game 1, and they're going to decide who they go game 2 after. And
you
that
did,
is exactly
Scott. You're ahead of the curve. You get points here. We don't always nail it.
I rarely am right. I'm rarely right, but I want to point out when I'm right, and that's exactly what this team is doing.
I mean, look, by all accounts, this is a new playoff format. We've never seen it before. So there isn't like the term, conventional baseball wisdom. It doesn't apply here, right? Which is kind of the exciting part. We've seen, I think the New York Mets are really considering doing this too.
Yes.
So, I mean, it must not be that crazy of an idea.
So the idea behind it is you go out, you pitch Alek Manoah. If for some reason the Blue Jays do not take game 1, Kevin Gausman is your game 2 starter.
Yeah.
Now, if the Blue Jays do win today, then you flip the script and you put Ross Stripling, who has been incredible all year long. I honestly feel just as comfortable with with Kevin Gausman as I do with Ross Stripling. I think that they are interchangeable. However, I would prefer to see Kevin Gausman get 2 games in the ALDS if they do move on to that division series. So by pitching Ross Stripling in game 2, that lines Kevin Gausman up. If you can sweep the Mariners, a big ask, by the way, it lines up Kevin Gausman for game 1, matching up against Justin Verlander of the Houston Astros. Now, if Stripling loses game 2, you still have Kevin Gausman lined up for that deciding game 3 in the wild card series. It's pretty interesting. I like that we were right on something, Adam.
We were right on something. There you go. Look at us.
Should we let's talk Whit Merrifield here before we move on to the other series and wrap this thing up. And everyone in the chat, feel free to jump in here. Brandon Burns, hello. Thanks for Brandon Burns says, Rowdy would have been nice at DH. Can we trade back Richards?
You win some, you lose some, right?
You win some, you lose some. Everyone in the chat, feel free to pipe up here. Whit Merrifield. There were some question marks around this man when he was originally acquired at the trade deadline. But I think it's safe to say that we are seeing a whole nother level of Whit Merrifield than when he first joined this team. We're seeing a 2018-2019 leading the American League in hits version of Whit Merrifield. We're seeing him show some personality, goof around with the guys, have some fun in interviews. He's enjoying baseball. And this is a dude who came up through the Kansas City Royals system. He never got to play on that 2015 World Series winning team. He was still in the minors at that time and never got placed on the playoff roster. Since 2015, the Royals were stripped down to almost nothing and have been god-awful. He has played on a basement-dwelling team for his 6 big league years. And winning's fun. You're seeing a looseness, an enjoyment of the game out of Whit that you haven't seen in his career. And he's a 32-year-old dude. He's a veteran guy. He was a little bit of a late bloomer, despite how good he is. I think Whit Merrifield could really be a difference maker on this team, especially at the bottom of the batting order. If he can start getting on base for the big guys when you turn that lineup over, it is going to be one of the biggest difference makers in a playoff series. Power pitching and power hitters. That's normally what makes or breaks a playoff series.
Just looking at Whit Merrifield's baseball reference page, a lot of bold in his stat categories. Bold indicating player led the league. 2018 led the league in hits. 2019 led the league in hits. Led the league in triples in 2019. Led the league in stolen bases on 3 different occasions. Led the league in doubles once. Speed guy, competitive guy, like you said, having fun. It's good to see. Winning is fun.
Yeah.
Which, not to pivot too far away from the Blue Jays, but I was reading this morning an article that Albert Pujols had considered retiring mid-season.
I saw that.
Obviously, he got to 703. That was the speculation all year long, was could he get to 700? He's done it. He spent 10 years with the LA Angels. I mean, making $300 million is fun.
Yeah.
But so is playing competitive baseball. And I think getting him back to St. Louis on a competitive club where he is competing every day, contributing to meaningful games, has re-energized his career. I
mean, I sent you this stat yesterday. So in the first half of the year, 53 games, 173 plate appearances. Albert Pujols had 32 hits, 6 doubles, a batting average of .215, 6 home runs, 20 RBIs, and an OPS of .676. This is his first 53 games. He wasn't playing every day either. Enter the All-Star break. He beats Kyle Schwarber to move on in the home run derby. All of a sudden, old Albert turns his season around. Second half, the last 55 games where he played almost every day. 176 plate appearances. So 3 more plate appearances than the first half. He has 25 runs, 50 hits, 8 doubles, a batting average of .321, 18 home runs, 48 RBIs, and an OPS of 1104. This might be the best final 3 months of any player's career.
Of any sport, even, I would say. Yeah, you're probably on the money there. I wonder, I know this is going to be pure speculation. Feel free to tell me I'm way out of line here. If we look at the all-time home run leaders list, we've got...
I know where you're going with this.
No, you don't. We've got Barry Bonds at 762, all-time home run king. It is what it is. Hank Aaron, 755. Babe Ruth, 714. Albert Pujols, 703. Suck it, A-Rod.
Yeah.
The LA Angels made the playoffs one season when Albert Pujols was in LA. Now, he was still putting up massive numbers, okay? I can't pretend that he wasn't. He was still putting up, let's see, first season with LA, 30 home runs. He's got a 28 home run season, a 40 home run season, another 31 home run season. These are back half of his career numbers,
big time
too,
power
right?
numbers, yes.
But he did have seasons where he hit 17 home runs, where he hit 19 home runs, where he hit 23 home runs. All I'm saying is, I'm not saying he would have definitively caught Barry Bonds. I don't think he would have. But if he was on a competitive team for those 10 extra years, do you think there's an extra 5 home runs a season? Do Do you think he gets an extra 50 home runs over the course of his career? I don't think that's too much of a stretch.
That's a great question, man. I don't know how to answer that. I mean, we're really diving deep into the speculation pool here, but no, that's a great question, and I don't think it is outlandish to say. And you did go in a different direction than I was thinking. I thought you were going to be like, will he come back and try and beat Babe Ruth? But
will he come back and try and catch Barry Bonds?
Yeah.
Play five more seasons.
Now that he's hitting 25 home runs a year again, and like an OPS of 1100, does he return? But of course not. I think Albert just rides off into the sunset.
It's been a great bookend to this wonderful career of his. So, tip of the cap to Albert Pujols for sure.
Let's really quickly talk the other games being played today. Obviously, the Blue Jays are slotted in at that 4:07 Eastern time. So the first game gets going here in about 30 minutes, which is going to be the Rays and the Guardians. I've got the Guardians winning this one. You do as well, right?
Guardians versus Rays, yes, I do.
Then we see at 2:07 Eastern time, the Phillies and the Cardinals. This is a really weird series. I think the Cardinals should just sweep this series. The Phillies have a god-awful bullpen, or at least they have in September. It's just completely crumbled on them. I think it's like a 5 ERA. It's one of the worst bullpens in September in all of baseball. Their defense is terrible. The one thing the Phillies do have going for them is their first two pitchers is Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, who both of them totally capable of stealing a game. So, I mean, this is a series where you could see the Phillies somehow completely align with the baseball gods and really hand the Cinderella Cardinals a loss that nobody wants to see. But I do think that in the end, the Cardinals have more depth. They play a much more solid brand of baseball. The Cards should move on from this series. And I'm picking the Cards.
I got the Cards as well.
And then the game that's going after the Blue Jays, the San Diego Padres and the New York Mets. It's a weird series.
It is a weird series. You've got the Padres going on. I've got the Mets.
I do have the Padres. Honestly, I'm rooting for the Padres, but I think if I have to pick a team, I think I do lean more towards the Mets, and I say that mostly because it's in New York, and when you look at the starting pitchers that New York are trotting out, it's tough to bet against Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, and Chris Bassett, but it's also tough to bet against Manny Machado, Juan Soto, and Josh Bell, right? So.
It's harder to bet against them if they've got Fernando Tatis Jr. Are the San Diego Padres the Toronto Blue Jays of the NL?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Young
Probably
team,
not.
Tough division. LA Dodgers, San Francisco Giants, San
Maybe
Diego
the New York
Padres.
Mets are more the Toronto Blue Jays?
No, Mets have the mega budget. They have.
Yeah, that's true.
They are too dominant in that division. In terms of like, when you look at the AL East,
yes,
year after year, the Blue Jays are not considered to be one of the juggernauts at the top of that division, but young, scrappy team can do damage, kind of a thing, right? Like you look at the NL West, you've got the Dodgers every year. That's the New York Yankees comparable. The San Francisco Giants, they're the Red Sox of the NL West.
Yeah, I would agree with you now that you explained it. I would agree with you. I like it. Okay, let's close on a positive spin, if you will. So a lot of complaints about the start time of this Toronto Blue Jays and Seattle Mariners series. Obviously, it lines up at 4 p.m. Eastern, both today and tomorrow. and then a 2 p.m. Eastern start if it's needed on Sunday. Now, there are a lot of complaints, especially from Torontonians, and that's fair. You want to go see this team, you wait 162 games throughout the season, find out that this team that is all of our heart and soul, like you follow this team for that entirety of the season, and you want to be able to take in the fruits of that labor, right, which is playoff baseball, and then they time it at 4 p.m. on a Friday. It's pretty tough for people who work till 5 or 6 to go see this game. So there are complaints, but who is enjoying it? I know my buddies in Halifax are like, oh my God, we actually get a game where it can be our evening, right? So often, a good shout out here to my buddy Neil Rhodes. He does his best to catch every Blue Jays game, but when they're starting at 8, 9, 10, 11 at night, it can be pretty difficult.
3+ hour game. Oh yeah.
So when he looks at that time and he sees 5:07 and he's done work at 4:30, he's just like, holy crap. Touchdown.
Touchdown. Shout out to all the youth out west in Canada who are maybe calling in sick to school today.
Yes.
I know I would have loved to just taken a day off school when I was a kid to watch some Blue Jays playoff baseball. Never got the chance. They were never a playoff team when I was in school. My daughter is getting a half day today.
Hey,
I'm going to go pick her up at 1:00 and we're going to grab some Slurpees and we're going to enjoy some Blue Jays playoff baseball. Whether she likes it or not.
I love it. Whether you're like, listen, if you're getting off school, you're watching this game with me. Those are your options.
She had the balls to negotiate with me. She's like, okay, I'll watch the game with you, but can I be on my phone while I do it? I'm like, no, if I'm taking you out of school and we're getting like Slurpees, you're not gonna be on your phone. That defeats the purpose. So
we should have started with this, Adam. I love this. This is great. Fantastic. All right. And of course, our friend from the Netherlands who popped into the chat is also pretty excited about the start time. The further east you go, the happier people are with these early start times for Blue Jays baseball. So.
Honestly, 4:07 is probably the worst for that Eastern time zone.
Yeah.
Right? It's not even, you can't take a day off work just for the last hour, right? So
I know. It
feels
just
like kind of a waste.
It's a crummy time. And really, it's funny because most Torontonians are even like, oh, thank God MLB didn't stick us with the 10:05 Mountain Time game, right? Which is what we were all worried about. So, anyways, honestly, thank you so much. Oh, Simon Dennis, friend of the show, stopping in here in the chat. But honestly, thank you to everyone in the chat who has participated and followed along. We really appreciate it. If you're this far into the video and you haven't hit like or you have not subscribed, we'd really appreciate it if you do. Oh, John says Tokyo, Japan for me. All right.
Wow.
All right, gang. This is where we're going to call it. Go Blue Jays, go. This is what we've been waiting for the entire season is playoff baseball, and we're finally here. So let's cheer on our Jays, and all the best to all of you. Take care. Cheers.